Black Virgin thought he was her prince, but a passionate night with the millionaire led to a heartbreaking betrayal before we dive into this unforgettable love story. If you believe in second chances, true love, and powerful women who rise from heartbreak, this story is for you. But first, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. I'd love to know. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional, passionate, and inspiring stories that touch the soul. The crystal-clear glass doors of the luxury watch boutique slid open with a soft whisper. The rich scent of leather, polished marble, and expensive cologne clung to the air like an unspoken promise of elegance. It was just another day at Lucien Timepieces, but for Amara Sinclair, it was another test of patience, pride, and poise. She stood behind the velvet-trimmed counter, her posture flawless, her smile professional. But her eyes were tired. Tired of fake niceties. Tired of the whispered comments some customers made when they thought she couldn't hear. Tired of being looked at like she didn't belong in a world built for the wealthy. But still, she stood there, proud, composed, radiant. Amara's long, intricately braided hair shimmered under the boutique lights, each strand a crown she wore with silent confidence. Her cocoa-toned skin glowed against her crisp cream blouse, and her curves filled her pencil skirt like poetry in motion. Brown eyes, framed with thick lashes, scanned the display before her, rearranging limited edition watches, each one worth more than her monthly paycheck. Then the door opened. A sudden hush swept through the boutique. She looked up. Time, for just a moment, paused. He stepped in like he owned the world. Tall, sharp-suited, and devastatingly handsome, Damon Knight moved with quiet command. His ice-blue eyes swept the room, searching, assessing. The perfectly tailored charcoal suit he wore clung to his sculpted frame like a second skin. His beard was trimmed, his jaw cut from marble, and when he smiled faintly, it was the kind that made people wonder what it would take to earn it again. Amara's breath caught. She had seen wealthy men before. She had served billionaires, athletes, celebrities. But this man didn't walk in with arrogance. He walked in like gravity bent for him. Their eyes met. A slow, deep pulse thundered in Amara's ears. He didn't look away. Neither did she. Then he smiled. Not the polite, closed-lipped kind. It was warm, curious, a little dangerous. Amara blinked herself back to professionalism. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Lucien Timepieces. How may I assist you?" His voice was deep velvet. "I need a gift. Something unique. Something unforgettable." Her heart skipped, but her hands moved with steady grace. She gestured toward the exclusive section. "Then allow me to show you our Royal Eclipse collection. These are handcrafted in Switzerland, one of a kind." As she stepped around the counter, he watched her, not inappropriately, but attentively. Like every move she made told him something. The sway of her hips, the strength in her voice, the kindness in her eyes. "What's your name?" he asked. She paused. "Amara." He repeated it softly. "Amara. Beautiful name." She cleared her throat, trying not to show the blush creeping up her neck. "And you, sir?" "Damon. Damon Knight." She had heard that name before. The young tech CEO who turned cybersecurity into a billion-dollar empire before the age of 30. The media darling. The billionaire with a mysterious past and an even more mysterious smile. Amara showed him the watches, explaining features, histories, values. Her fingers moved like artists across the glass, pointing to details, narrating design stories. Damon listened, but his eyes often found their way back to her face. Then it happened. As she reached for the final watch in the collection, a sleek obsidian-faced timepiece wrapped in platinum, her hand slipped. The watch dropped. Time shattered. The heavy piece hit the marble floor with a sickening crack. Silence. The manager stormed over, his face red, his voice sharp. "What the hell, Amara? Do you know how much that costs? $10,000. Gone!" Amara froze. Her stomach dropped. Her hands trembled. I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Sorry. Sorry won't cover that damage. You'll pay for this. Do you hear me?" Tears filled her eyes, hot and humiliating. "I can't," she choked out. I don't have that kind of money. Please, please." Customers began staring. Whispers floated around. Shame burned in her cheeks like fire. Then Damon stepped forward. His voice was low, firm, and cool. "It was my fault. I startled her. Put it on my tab." The manager blinked. "What?" "I said I'll pay for it." Damon pulled out his black titanium card and laid it on the counter like a royal decree. "And send the rest of your staff to customer service training." Amara turned to him in disbelief. Her lips parted. Her tears stopped. He turned to her. His eyes were soft now, kind. "You don't cry in front of people who don't deserve your tears," he said. A sob rose in her throat. No one had ever stood up for her like that. Then he pulled a card from his inner jacket pocket and placed it in her hand. "I'm looking for a new personal secretary," he said. "You've got poise, intelligence, and heart. Come to my office tomorrow morning. Leave this place behind." Amara stared at the card. Damon Knight, CEO, Knight Cybertech. She looked up, but he was already walking away. She held the card to her chest, her heart racing with a wild, confused hope. Maybe this wasn't the end of the worst day of her life. Maybe it was the beginning of something more. Something dangerous. Something divine. Something fated. The following afternoon, the boutique buzzed with its usual symphony of luxury, heels clicking on marble, hushed conversations over champagne, and the soft beeping of the security system as each high-end piece was handled with reverence. Amara stood at her post, her palms slightly damp, nerves tightening her spine. Her mind replayed the moment over and over. Damon's gaze, the kindness in his voice, the feel of his card between her fingers. She hadn't told anyone about the job offer. It felt too surreal. Like if she said it out loud, the magic would break and reality would snap her back to a world where men like Damon Knight didn't notice women like her. But now he was back. The bell chimed, soft and golden. Amara's heart stuttered. Damon walked in again. Sleek, silent, devastating. Today he wore navy, his silver watch gleaming against his tanned wrist. He moved like every step had purpose, like even time waited for him to catch up. Their eyes met again, and he smiled. "Amara," he said, like it was a song only he remembered. "Good afternoon, Mr. Knight," she replied, her voice softer than she intended. She could feel the jealous eyes of her co-workers. He chuckled. "Damon." "Just Damon," she swallowed. "What can I help you with today?" "I need another gift," he said. "Something rare. Something that says, 'I see you.'" Her knees went weak for a second. She led him back to the echelon vault, the section of the store reserved for ultra-elite clients. Only managers and top staff were allowed to handle those pieces. But he wanted her. She opened the vault with shaking fingers. Rows of watches glimmered under the golden light, each one more extravagant than the last. "This one," she said, carefully reaching for a platinum Omega Enigma, limited to just 5 in the world. It's elegant, rare, and slip. Her hand missed. The watch tumbled. The air went still. It hit the marble floor with a hollow, brutal crack. It echoed like a gunshot. The room fell into stunned silence. "No, no," Amara whispered. She dropped to her knees, picking up the shattered fragments of platinum and sapphire glass with trembling hands. Her breath came in shallow bursts. She could already hear the shouting. "Amara!" Mr. Lucien's voice sliced through the room like a whip. "What the hell did you just do? That watch is worth $10,000. She looked up, tears already in her eyes. It slipped. "I'm so sorry." "You're sorry?" he bellowed. "You'll pay for it. That's what you'll do. Out of your salary." I don't make that much. Please, I can't." Customers were staring. A couple pulled their phones out to record. Amara's face burned with shame. "I told them not to hire," the manager started, then stopped short. Damon stepped forward. "Enough," he said. Quiet, but absolute. The manager blinked. "Excuse me?" "She was helping me," Damon said. "I distracted her. This is on me." "But, Mr. Knight, I said I'll pay for it," he repeated, slipping his card from his wallet. "Charge it." The manager stammered, then took the card, his mouth still half open. Amara stood slowly. Her hands were shaking, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You didn't have to," she whispered. Damon looked at her, with something fierce and unspoken behind his gaze. "Yes, I did." Tears fell from her eyes. Hot, embarrassed, grateful. "You don't deserve to be spoken to like that," he added. "Not by anyone." She bit her lip to keep from sobbing. "You don't even know me." "Maybe I'd like to," he said softly. Amara looked down, clutching the ruined remains of the watch in her hands. "You just spent 10 grand to protect me." "No," Damon said, stepping closer. "I spent 10 grand to remind you that your dignity isn't for sale." Her breath hitched. She could barely stand beneath the weight of what those words did to her. Damon leaned in slightly, speaking so only she could hear. "I meant what I said yesterday. Come to my office. This place isn't worthy of you." She nodded slowly, unable to speak. He turned, walking away without waiting for applause or recognition, just like a storm leaving peace in its wake. As the door closed behind him, Amara stared at the broken watch in her hands. It wasn't just glass that shattered today. It was the barrier she'd built between herself and the hope that maybe, just maybe, something beautiful could still happen to her. The golden edge of dawn filtered through the blinds of Amara's modest apartment, painting slanted shadows on the worn hardwood floor. She stood by her tiny mirror, hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the lapels of her blazer for the 4th time. Her eyes were wide, restless with anticipation. Her heart thumped like a tribal drum in her chest. Damon Knight's business card sat on her nightstand, gleaming like a key to another world. Knight Cybertech. It felt like a dream she hadn't dared write down for fear the ink would vanish. 1 day ago, she had been humiliated, almost fired, her dignity stripped in front of strangers. And now, here she was, about to walk into the office of a man who had seen her at her lowest and offered her something no one else had. A chance. Not out of pity, not as a favor, but because he saw something in her. She grabbed her purse, ran her fingers through her braids, and took one last look at herself. "You belong in that room," she whispered to her reflection. The towering glass skyscraper that housed Knight Cybertech shimmered in the morning sun. like it was made of diamond. People in suits moved swiftly in and out, purpose in every step, ambition in every breath. Amara stepped inside, and instantly the cool, modern interior engulfed her. The marble floors were so polished she could see her reflection. The receptionist looked up and smiled. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" "Yes," Amara said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "I'm here to see Mr. Damon Knight." The receptionist blinked, then smiled wider. "You're Amara. He told me to expect you. Go right up. Top floor." Top floor. Of course. She rode the elevator alone, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Each ding of the passing floors tightened the knot in her stomach. Then, at floor 48, the doors parted with a soft sigh. She stepped out into a world of white leather furniture, steel finishes, and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city. The skyline stretched beyond glass, like success was a horizon you could touch. And then she saw him. Standing by the window, hands in his pockets, sunlight kissing the edge of his sharp jawline. Damon turned when he heard her footsteps. "Amara," he said, a smile playing at his lips. "You came." His voice washed over her like warm honey. "I wasn't sure if it was real," she said. "I half expected security to escort me out." He chuckled. "You should get used to being wanted in the right rooms." Her breath caught. He gestured to a sleek desk near his own. "If you're still interested, that's yours. As my personal secretary, you'll handle scheduling, confidential emails, travel coordination, and some executive reporting. High trust, high expectation, and high reward." Amara blinked. "You're serious?" "Deadly." "Why me?" He studied her for a long moment. "Because when everyone else was looking at their watches, I saw someone worth watching." She nearly melted. No one had ever seen her like that before. Not her exes, not her old bosses, not even herself some days. Damon handed her a key card, his fingers brushing hers briefly. Electricity sparked up her arm. "You start tomorrow, unless you'd rather have champagne now and start Monday." She laughed, and it surprised her, how free it felt. "Tomorrow's perfect," she said. "Then it's a deal," he replied. He turned away but paused, looking back at her. "You're going to do more than work here, Amara. You're going to rise." She swallowed hard, blinking fast. It wasn't just a job, it was a new beginning. And her heart, her foolish, hopeful, reborn heart, was already whispering the truth she couldn't say aloud yet. Maybe he's the one. The days at Night Cybertech began to blur, but not in the way Amara had feared. Instead of drowning in endless spreadsheets, or being spoken down to like so many jobs before, she found herself rising. Damon made good on every word. He introduced her to the team not as his assistant, but as his right hand. She had her own office, glass-walled, minimalist, elegant. Every morning, her desk was already stocked with fresh orchids, imported tea, and a note handwritten by Damon himself. "Let today be bigger than yesterday. Dell." He saw her. Not just the beautiful woman she was, but the mind behind her eyes, the way she anticipated his needs before he voiced them, how she absorbed knowledge like a sponge and never folded under pressure. She had never felt more valued. But something else was happening too, something unspoken and electric. It started with the way his gaze lingered a moment too long during meetings, how he leaned a little closer when he asked for files, how his fingers would brush hers when passing a report. Slowly, intentionally. At first, she told herself it was nothing. But then came the dinners. They were always professional in name, scheduled after long days when they both needed a quick bite. But the restaurants were always private, candle-lit, tucked in exclusive corners of the city. He ordered for her once, and the dish was perfect. She laughed when he knew her favorite wine after only a week. "You notice everything," she said one night, sipping from the glass. Damon smirked over the rim of his. "Only when it's worth noticing." The words made her knees weak under the table. They talked about more than work, about their pasts, dreams, music. She learned he lost his parents young and built his empire from a dorm room. He learned that her father left when she was 8, and her mother worked 2 jobs just to pay rent. "You're the first man I've met who listens to more than my voice," she said softly one night. "You're the first woman I've met who listens between the silences," he replied. And then there were the touches. In the elevator, after hours, his hand brushed her lower back as she stepped in. At a gala, his fingers lingered just a second longer on her wrist after slipping on her name badge. During a stormy evening meeting, when thunder cracked and she flinched, he reached for her hand, laced his fingers with hers, and didn't let go. Still, nothing happened. Not yet. They danced on the edge of a line neither dared to cross. But their souls, they were already tangled. One evening, after an investor pitch, they found themselves alone in his office, city lights glittering beyond the glass walls. The buzz of adrenaline hadn't worn off. Damon loosened his tie, the top buttons of his shirt undone, revealing a glimpse of tanned skin and the sculpted line of his collarbone. "You were incredible in that room," he murmured. "You coached me through it." "No," he said, stepping closer. "You didn't need coaching. You just needed someone to believe in you." She looked up at him, heart pounding. "You believed in me before I believed in myself." He studied her for a moment, the air between them thick with tension and want. Then he smiled faintly. "Careful, Amara. You make me forget we're supposed to keep things professional." Her breath caught. "Maybe we're not meant to." A silence stretched, heavy, loaded, tender. But instead of closing the space between them, Damon stepped back. "I'll walk you to your car," he said, voice low. And as they rode the elevator down together, their fingers brushed once more, warm, deliberate, and full of things they weren't saying yet. That night, Amara lay awake, her body aching with longing, her mind a whirl of what-ifs. She was falling, not just for the job, not just for the fantasy, but for the man who'd cracked open her soul with nothing more than a gaze and the belief that she was worth everything. The air was velvet that night, warm, scented with jasmine and the electric hum of the city. High above the chaos on the rooftop of Luna and Company, one of Manhattan's most exclusive skyline restaurants, Amara stood near the glass railing, the wind teasing her braids and brushing against her collarbone like a whisper. She wore midnight blue silk that clung to her curves like it had been painted on. A slit traced up her thigh, and when she walked, it whispered elegance and temptation in equal measure. Her skin glowed under the moonlight, kissed bronze by the stars. Behind her, Damon spoke with the maître d', finalizing something. She watched him, tall, composed, breathtaking in a fitted black suit, his beard trimmed to perfection, his eyes like sapphires burning in shadow. Then he turned to her. "I told them to keep the rooftop just for us tonight," he said, walking slowly toward her, his voice low and smooth like aged scotch. You deserve a moment that doesn't belong to the world." Her breath hitched. "And this?" she asked, her smile soft. "Is this a business dinner?" Damon's lips curved into something deeper. "Only if you want it to be." They dined under the stars, candlelight dancing between them, laughter spilling like champagne, fingers occasionally brushing across the table with growing intent. Every time their eyes met, the air thickened. Her pulse drummed a rhythm she couldn't silence. Later, they stood by the edge of the terrace, the city a blur of color below, the stars glinting like they knew what was coming. "Do you believe in fate?" Damon asked quietly. Amara turned to him, heart thudding. "I used to. Then life happened." He looked at her. Really looked. "I think sometimes fate disguises itself as a mistake, like a broken watch in a store, or a woman who was never supposed to cross my path, but did anyway." Her breath caught. "I think," he whispered, stepping closer, "that if I don't kiss you right now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." And before she could answer, he leaned in. His hand touched her cheek, warm, steady, reverent. And then, gently, his lips met hers. Software slow. The kiss didn't demand, it unraveled. Her lips parted under his, and everything else disappeared. The city lights melted behind her eyelids. The rooftop, the noise, the time, it all faded into the silence of that perfect, suspended moment. She clutched his shirt as his hand slid to the small of her back, pulling her closer. He kissed her like he was memorizing her soul, not just her mouth, like he had waited his whole life for the taste of her. When they finally broke apart, Amara exhaled shakily, her forehead resting against his. "Wow," she whispered. Damon laughed softly. "Yeah, that about covers it. I didn't think you'd actually." "I've wanted to, from the moment you said my name," he said, "but I needed to be sure you saw yourself the way I see you." Tears prickled at her lashes. "And how's that?" "Unstoppable," he said, kissing the corner of her mouth. "Unforgettable?" Another kiss, slower this time. "Unbelievably beautiful." Her heart soared. The city below could have fallen into darkness, and she wouldn't have noticed. Because at that moment, wrapped in Damon Knight's arms, with his kiss still tingling on her lips and his heartbeat matching her own, Amara realized her dreams weren't distant stars anymore. They were real, and they had just kissed her back. The ride back to the hotel was quiet, but not empty. Amara sat beside Damon in the back of the sleek black car, her hand resting on his thigh, his fingers interlaced with hers. Their silence was thick with anticipation, every breath filled with the unspoken truth that tonight was no longer a question. It was a promise waiting to be fulfilled. The car pulled into the circular driveway of the Verona Lux, a 5-star hotel that kissed the clouds with its glittering glass facade. The doorman greeted them by name. Damon had already made arrangements. The elevator doors slid closed, cocooning them in privacy. Neither spoke, but their bodies leaned toward each other instinctively, like gravity had been replaced with desire. Amara could feel his breath, warm and uneven, just like hers. When they reached the penthouse suite, he unlocked the door, stepped aside, and let her walk in first. The room was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, golden lights twinkling like fireflies. Rose petals were scattered across the massive bed, a chilled bottle of champagne waiting in a crystal bucket. Amara turned, her lips parting to ask how. But the words never came. Because Damon was suddenly there, in front of her, looking at her like she was the only woman who had ever existed. "You're so beautiful it hurts," he whispered. And then he kissed her. This kiss wasn't like the one under the stars. This one burned. His mouth moved over hers with hunger, urgent, desperate. She answered it with equal fire, rising onto her toes, her arms wrapping around his neck as his hands slid down her back, pressing her flush against him. She could feel every inch of his desire, and it ignited something inside her she didn't know she was capable of. His hands found the zipper of her dress, slowly lowering it, eyes locked on hers as the fabric slipped from her shoulders, revealing honeyed skin and curves that made him inhale sharply. "God, Amara," he murmured, kissing down her throat. "Do you have any idea what you do to me?" Her dress pooled at her feet, and she stood in nothing but lace and moonlight. She reached for him, tugging at his jacket, his tie, his shirt, peeling away the armor of power and revealing the man beneath. When his shirt hit the floor, she paused to take him in. Sculpted chest, strong arms, and eyes filled with nothing but her. "You're mine tonight," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I've always been yours," she breathed. He scooped her into his arms, carrying her to the bed like she was made of silk and stardust. The petals whispered beneath her as he laid her down, kissing every inch of her body like she was sacred. Every touch was slow, worshipful. Every sigh, every moan, a symphony just for them. When he finally entered her, their eyes stayed locked, both of them gasping as their bodies became one. She held him tightly, her fingers digging into his shoulders, her heart bursting with the depth of it all. He moved inside her with a rhythm that matched her soul. No rush, no performance. Just love. Real. Raw. Consuming. And as they soared together, her breath breaking against his ear, she heard his voice whisper through the waves of pleasure. "You're everything, Amara. Everything I didn't know I needed." Later, they lay tangled in sheets and each other. Her head rested on his chest, his fingers trailing idle circles along her spine. "I've never felt like this before," she whispered. He kissed her forehead. "Neither have I." She lifted her head, searching his face. "What happens now?" He smiled, brushing her braid behind her ear. "Now, we take our time. We write a story worth remembering." She smiled softly, her eyes glistening. She had given him her body. But more than that, she'd given him her soul. Because in that room, above the city, above her old life, above fear, Amara believed she had found forever, and forever had kissed her back. Sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains of the penthouse suite, washing the room in a soft golden haze. Amara stirred slowly, the scent of rose petals and skin still lingering in the sheets. Her body ached sweetly, the memory of Damon's touch still echoing through her bones. He was already awake, shirtless, leaning against the window with a cup of black coffee, staring out at the city. She smiled. She had never felt so complete. The night had been magic, passion and tenderness interwoven like silk threads. She had given herself to him in every way, believing she was finally loved, seen, cherished. For the first time in her life, she had no doubts. "Good morning," she whispered, her voice soft as she slipped out of bed and wrapped a sheet around her body. Damon glanced over his shoulder, the corner of his lips lifting. "Morning, beautiful." She padded across the room and leaned into him, resting her head on his chest, his arm draped around her absently, sipping his coffee. "I was thinking," she murmured, tracing a finger over his chest. "We should get breakfast at that little cafe you love. Then maybe go see that townhouse listing in Brooklyn you mentioned. You said you wanted something quieter. Maybe for the future." She laughed softly. "Can you imagine? You, me, a little backyard, maybe a golden retriever running around." Damon stiffened slightly. She didn't notice. Not yet. "And one day," she continued, her voice laced with warmth, "maybe a wedding. A small one. Just people we love. I always dreamed of a dress with long sleeves and pearls." Then she looked up at him, eyes glowing. "I love you, Damon." There was silence. A pause too long. She felt the chill before the words even came. He blinked once, then laughed, cold, cruel, dry. "Wait, what?" Amara's smile faltered. "I said I love you." He pulled away from her slightly, brow furrowed, amusement dancing cruelly in his blue eyes. "You're serious?" he asked, setting his coffee down. She nodded slowly, trying to read his expression. Then his face hardened. "Wow," he said, shaking his head. "You really thought this was something else?" "Damon," her voice cracked, confusion swelling. "You thought last night meant we were in love? That we're going to... What, get married? Are you mental?" Her breath caught. "What?" "You heard me." He walked away from the window, grabbing his shirt off a chair. "What is your status, Amara? What's your background? You were selling watches last month. I own the building. I own your job. You think that makes us equals?" Tears welled in her eyes, disbelieving. "But you said I was special. You kissed me like I mattered." He scoffed. "You're beautiful. And you're good in bed. But that doesn't mean I'm going to ruin my reputation marrying someone like you." His words sliced through her like broken glass. She stood frozen, her dreams shattering around her feet. "I gave you everything last night," she whispered, voice trembling. "No," he said, buttoning his shirt. "You gave me what I wanted. And now it's done." She clutched the sheet tighter around her, her heart cracking open. "I thought you were different." Damon shrugged. "You thought wrong." A sob escaped her lips as she backed away from him. "I was stupid to believe someone like you could love someone like me." He looked at her, unmoved. "You were naive. But don't beat yourself up. It happens all the time." She nodded slowly, her tears now silent. Then she turned away from him, her body shaking, her soul hollow. "I'm sorry," she said, almost to herself. "I should have known better." She gathered her things in silence, dressed without another word. Damon didn't try to stop her. When she left the suite, the world outside seemed colder than ever, and as the elevator doors closed, sealing her away from the man who broke her, Amara knew this truth. She had given her heart to a man who only saw her body. And now, she would never be the same. The hotel lobby was too grand, too polished, like the world refused to acknowledge her pain. Amara stepped out of the elevator, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. Her movements were mechanical. The doorman smiled at her. She didn't smile back. Couldn't. Outside, the morning sun was too bright. The streets bustled with people who had no idea her world had just collapsed. She wrapped her arms tightly around herself and walked. Tears traced her cheeks silently, hot and endless, blending with the breeze that tugged at her braids. How had everything changed so fast? Just hours ago, she had given herself to Damon with trust and trembling hope. She had felt chosen, seen, adored. Now each word he had said echoed in her head like cruel thunder. "Are you mental? What is your status? You think I'd marry you?" Her heart clenched with every step. The streets blurred. His laughter still rang in her ears, cold, sharp, mocking. It wasn't just rejection. It was annihilation. A cab slowed beside her, but she waved it off. She needed to walk, to feel the ache in her feet match the ache in her chest. By the time she reached her tiny apartment, her legs were trembling. She closed the door behind her and sank to the floor, clutching herself as sobs ripped through her. It was the kind of crying that came from the soul, not just from pain, but from shame, from betrayal, from the collapse of everything she believed in. Amara had believed in love. She had believed in him. Now she sat in the quiet darkness of her home, surrounded by the shadows of dreams that would never come true. On the other side of the city, Damon Knight was back in his world of polished glass and bottomless luxury. His penthouse gleamed. His staff catered to him like royalty. He poured himself a drink, not a flicker of guilt in his eyes. Another woman was already calling his name. Blonde, wealthy, barely 22. Just another face in the rotation. He didn't think of Amara. Not yet. For him, it was just a night. For her, it was everything. Amara stood eventually. Her reflection caught in the mirror. Red eyes, shaky breath. But somewhere beneath the grief, a tiny flame flickered. "I mistook lust for love," she whispered. "I thought he saw me." She stepped closer to the mirror. No more fairy tales. She wiped her tears. No more princes. It was the beginning of something new, something fierce. But tonight she would mourn. She would cry for the woman who believed. And tomorrow she would rise. Pain was no longer her enemy. It had become her fuel. Amara turned off her phone, cut ties with everything that reminded her of Damon Knight, and disappeared into the world of silence and study. Her apartment, once a place of tears, transformed into a sanctuary of discipline. The walls, once echoing with sorrow, now hummed with quiet determination. She enrolled in an intensive cybersecurity course at a tech institute downtown, days packed with lectures, nights filled with coding challenges, firewalls, encryption, penetration testing. Where others saw confusion, Amara saw purpose. Sleep became rare, coffee constant. Her braided hair was often tied in a bun, her makeup minimal, her outfits comfortable and practical. She didn't care about appearances anymore. She cared about becoming bulletproof. The girl who once cried in rose-scented sheets was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew pain, betrayal, and now power. Amara rose before the sun. She wrote code while others slept. She passed every exam with distinction. When her professors handed back her assignments, they whispered her name with quiet admiration. "That girl is brilliant," they said. But brilliance hadn't come from talent alone. It had come from heartbreak. It had come from Damon Knight. Every time she felt exhausted, she remembered his voice, his laugh when she said, "I love you," the disgust in his eyes when he questioned her worth. And with that memory, her hands moved faster on the keyboard, her mind sharper, her vision clearer. 6 months passed, then a year. And one morning, standing in front of the mirror, no longer red-eyed and fragile, Amara finally saw her reflection, not as something broken, but something reborn. Gone was the girl who looked for love in the eyes of a man who saw her as a moment. Now she was the woman who could protect empires from the shadows. Cybersecurity firms started to notice her. She began freelancing, tracking hacks, tracing ransomware, patching vulnerabilities that top-paid professionals failed to catch. Her reputation grew in underground forums and elite networks. Clients whispered her codename in awe, Firewall. She wasn't just good, she was untouchable. And slowly her confidence returned. Not the blind, romantic kind that made her weak for a soft kiss or a shiny car, but a deep, grounded belief in her own damn self. She wore her natural curves like armor now, her brown eyes sharper, her long braids a crown. Amara had risen from ashes, and the world had no idea what was coming next. Damon Knight stood at the top of his empire, smug as ever. He had it all. Money, power, women, influence. The world bowed when he walked into a room. His name was stitched on towers, engraved on contracts, whispered in boardrooms like a god's. But kings don't stay kings forever, and some empires rot from the inside. It started with a glitch, just a small alert on his banking app during breakfast at his penthouse. A minor login error. He didn't pay attention. He was too busy sipping imported espresso and scrolling through photos of the new model he had flown in for the weekend. The next day, another alert. Then 3 more. Still, he dismissed it. Probably a tech bug. He had teams for that. IT guys, analysts, firewalls. But by day 3, things started to unravel. His assistant ran into his office, pale and trembling. "Sir, there's a problem with the accounts." "What kind of problem?" Damon asked, barely glancing up. She hesitated. "All of them. They're gone." He froze. "What do you mean, gone?" She handed him the tablet. He stared at the screen. Zeros. All of them. Every offshore account. Every asset-backed ledger. Every numbered vault. Empty. Damon's blood ran cold. This has to be a joke. But it wasn't. His phone buzzed. Notifications from investors, partners, clients. Panic spread like wildfire. Lawsuits filed. Stocks crashing. Whispers in the media. Damon Knight's financial empire collapsing. He barked orders at his team. "Trace the hack. Shut everything down. Lock the servers." They tried, but the hacker was always 10 steps ahead. It was clean, calculated, merciless, like someone had crawled inside the bones of his company and snapped every one of them silently. For the first time in his life, Damon felt helpless. He had always been in control, always had the upper hand. But now, he was just another man with a crumbling empire, surrounded by suits who were scared of losing their jobs. By nightfall, silence took over his penthouse. No women, no champagne, no calls, just the cold hum of his refrigerator and the weight of everything crashing down. He stood at the same window where he once drank coffee with a woman who had looked at him like he was everything. Amara. Her name hit him like a wave of guilt he didn't know he'd been holding back. He hadn't thought of her in months. Not really. But tonight, as the world stripped him of all his gold and glass, she came back to him. And for the first time since he sent her away, Damon Knight wondered, what if she was the only thing I got right? Damon Knight sat in the silence of his once mighty office. The air was thick with the weight of loss, and the silence screamed louder than any chaos ever could. His empire, the one he had built brick by digital brick, had crumbled in a matter of days. His accounts were drained. His name was now fodder for the media. And his confidence, his ever-burning arrogance, was flickering like a dying candle. For the first time in years, he felt small, helpless, mortal. He had called his manager in a frenzy earlier that morning. There had to be someone who could undo this, some miracle worker who could recover what he had lost. His manager, looking grim, mentioned someone. "There's a specialist," he said. "Elite, anonymous. She's fixed bigger disasters than this, and she's local." Damon didn't care who it was. He needed results. He needed his life back. "Bring her in," he ordered, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, now messy and damp with stress. He sat in the sleek conference room, the walls made of glass, once symbolic of transparency and power. Now they felt like a cage. The door creaked open. He heard the heels before he saw her, measured, calm, powerful. Then she entered. Damon looked up, and time stopped. Amara. She walked in, poised and radiant in a fitted blazer, her long braids flowing like a silk curtain behind her. Her skin glowed with confidence, her chin slightly lifted, her steps unfaltering. Her eyes were the same brown he remembered, but colder now, sharp as a polished obsidian, no longer soft, no longer searching. He blinked, stood up slowly. "Amara?" "Mr. Knight," she replied, voice even, professional, icy. He nearly choked. "You're the expert." "I am." She sat without waiting for an invitation, opening her laptop and setting it on the table between them like a sword laid across a battlefield. She didn't look at him again, not even a flicker of nostalgia in her gaze. He could barely breathe. He looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't the same girl who once smiled nervously over spreadsheets, who blushed when their hands touched, who whispered, "I love you," into the darkness of his suite. This woman was reborn from fire. "You've changed," he said softly. She didn't look up. "I had to." He swallowed. I didn't expect to see me again." He nodded. She finally looked at him, just briefly. Life has a sense of irony, doesn't it? Silence fell again. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, typing in commands that he didn't understand, accessing digital realms he had once ruled. He watched her, marveling at her focus, her brilliance. This wasn't the woman who had cried in his arms. This was someone stronger, someone he didn't deserve to know anymore. He tried to speak again. "Amara, Don't! Not now. Not while I'm working." It was a dagger to his ego, but he nodded, quietly, obediently. She traced the breach in his system, like a hunter tracking prey. Her eyes flicked over lines of code, her mind working faster than any tech team he'd ever hired. In just an hour, she found the back door used by the hackers. Another hour, and she had begun reversing the damage. Still, she said nothing personal. She was all business. Damon couldn't stand it. "Amara, please, say something. I need to—" She cut him off with a glance. "What you need is to listen. Something you were never good at." He flinched. She was right. He remembered how he dismissed her feelings that morning after their night together. How he laughed at her dreams. How he called her stupid. He had broken something sacred, and now it stood before him, unshattered but untouchable. "Why did you take this job?" he asked quietly. "Because I'm the best, and your company was bleeding. I stopped caring about feelings a long time ago." "Did I really mean that little to you?" She paused. For a moment, her fingers stilled. "No," she said. "You meant everything. That was the problem." His heart ached. Her honesty sliced him deeper than any insult. By the 6th hour, she had recovered every lost cent, secured the firewalls, rebuilt the core of his digital empire, the same empire that once dismissed her. She shut her laptop. "You're secure now. No one's getting in again." He stood slowly. "What do I owe you?" She turned to face him fully, her expression unreadable. "You owe me nothing, because heartless men always remain poor." He blinked. "Please, give me a chance to say I'm sorry." Her expression flickered. Just once. You already said it, she whispered. But I don't need your words, Damon. I needed them when I loved you. He stepped closer. And now? Now? Now I need you to live with what you lost. She turned, walking toward the door. Her heels echoed like thunder in his ears. He followed her. Amara, wait! Do you hate me? She stopped. Number, I don't have space in my heart for hate, only purpose. He nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. Then what now? She glanced over her shoulder. Now you rise, or you fall again. But don't ever say no one gave you a second chance. And then she left. Damon stood alone in the ruins of his kingdom, watching the only woman who had truly seen him disappear through the glass doors. And for the first time, he realized, power meant nothing without someone to share it with. The office was cloaked in the heavy silence that always followed a storm. Damon sat on the edge of his leather chair, his eyes fixed on Amara as she worked, her fingers flying across the keyboard with relentless focus. 6 hours had passed, 6 hours of relentless digging, coding, tracing, patching, and in those 6 hours she had dismantled a digital nightmare and rebuilt a fortress from its ashes. Each tick of the clock was a reminder of everything he had nearly lost. But watching Amara was also a reminder of what he'd truly lost long ago. The woman who now sat before him, cold and controlled, a master of her field. Her laptop chimed. She stopped typing, leaned back, and folded her arms. It's done, she said flatly. Every cent is recovered. The breaches are closed. Your empire is safe, digitally. Damon exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Relief swept over him like a wave, but it was bittersweet. You're incredible, he said quietly. Thank you. She didn't respond. She simply began shutting down her laptop. He stood. Amara, what do I owe you for this? Whatever your fee is, name it. She looked at him, finally meeting his eyes. For a second, he thought he saw a flicker of the girl he once knew. Then she said, nothing. He blinked. Nothing? Her voice dropped, low and steady. Because you can't afford what you broke in me. Those words hit like a bullet straight through his chest. He opened his mouth to respond, but there was nothing he could say. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She was telling the truth. I wasn't just your secretary, she continued. I was a woman who believed in you. I gave you everything I had, my time, my trust, my heart, and you shattered it like it meant nothing. His throat tightened. Amara, You laughed in my face, she interrupted. You told me I wasn't good enough for you. You asked what my status was, as if love is about pedigree. And now, here you are, asking me to put a price on something priceless. He stepped toward her, cautiously. I was a fool. I see it now. I didn't know what I had, until I lost it. That's the tragedy of men like you, she said bitterly. You only see the value of gold once it's buried. He wanted to plead, to fall to his knees and beg her for another chance. But something about her silence, her strength, it told him she didn't want apologies. She wanted understanding. Respect. What do I have to do? He asked quietly. She studied him for a moment. Give up your wealth. He blinked. What? If you really want redemption, if you want to prove you're more than just a title and a wallet, then give it all up. Donate your fortune. Help those who have nothing. Give the life you once flaunted to those who deserve hope. He hesitated. The idea was radical, insane. But looking at her, feeling the depth of what he'd done, he realized this was his only chance. And then, he asked. Amara looked at him, softer now. Then maybe, just maybe, I'll believe that you've changed. The silence that followed wasn't cold anymore. It was heavy with potential, with the promise of redemption earned, not begged for. Damon extended his hand. I'll do it. Every cent. You have my word. She looked down at his hand, then slowly reached out and shook it. Words are wind, Damon. But actions are code. They leave a trace. I'll be watching. She turned and walked out of the office, leaving him standing there, changed. For the first time in his life, Damon Knight wasn't a man defined by wealth. He was a man seeking something real, and this time he wouldn't let it slip through his fingers. Days passed, but Damon Knight couldn't find peace, even with his fortune restored and his empire back on its feet. The emptiness inside him echoed louder than ever. The office halls no longer buzzed with importance. They rang with the absence of Amara. Her words, her strength, her quiet dignity. They followed him like a ghost he couldn't shake. He stared out of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, watching the city lights flicker like fading dreams. She had given him a path to redemption, but it required a sacrifice he had never made before, surrendering his wealth. He had spent a lifetime building it, the power, the reputation, the control, and now he was being asked to let it all go. But what good was an empire if the queen had walked away? Damon made the call the next morning. Lawyers, accountants, foundations. He arranged for half his wealth to be funneled into a fund for underprivileged women and children. The rest he divided among education scholarships, shelters, and community programs. The media exploded. Headlines screamed, "Tech tycoon donates fortune to social justice causes. Damon Knight gives it all away. A new legacy begins." He didn't speak to the press. He didn't want credit. He only wanted one thing, Amara. He sent her no flowers, no gifts. Only a letter, handwritten, left at her doorstep. "This isn't for forgiveness. This is because I finally see. I finally understand. You were never just my secretary. You were the mirror I couldn't bear to look into. Thank you for breaking me. Only then could I start to build a real man from the wreckage." A week passed, then another. No word from her. Until one evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, his doorbell rang. He opened it, and there she stood. No makeup, no fancy clothes, just Amara. Radiant, real. "I saw the news," she said quietly. "I didn't do it for you," he replied. She nodded. "I know. That's why it mattered." They stood in silence, the tension between them thick with memory. "Why did you really do it?" she asked. He stepped back, motioning her inside. "Let me show you." He walked her through his apartment. The lavish art was gone. The furniture was modest. His walls were bare except for one photo, her in a candid smile from their first company retreat. "I did it," he said, voice soft, "because I hated the man I was, and I never wanted to see him again." Her eyes glistened. She stepped closer. "You passed," she whispered. "Not because you gave it all away, but because you finally saw people. You saw me." "I see you now," he said, reaching for her hand. "Every curve of your soul, every piece I broke and now want to hold, if you'll let me." Her breath trembled. "And what do you want now, Damon?" He looked into her eyes. "Not power, not money, just you, as my partner, as my equal." She paused, then wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. For the first time, he held her without fear, without arrogance, without shame. This wasn't a transaction. This was a beginning, and he would spend the rest of his life proving he was worthy of it. Spring unfolded with a golden tenderness, soft blossoms dotting the city, as if the earth itself celebrated something sacred. Damon stood before a mirror in a modest dressing room tucked into the side of a small chapel. Gone was the tailored arrogance, the silk-smooth billionaire mask. In its place stood a man dressed simply, heart bared, nerves dancing in his chest. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the boutonniere on his lapel, a single white rose surrounded by lavender sprigs, Amara's favorite. Outside, guests filled the small garden courtyard, many of them faces touched by Damon's philanthropy. Single mothers who had found shelter, children now in school because of scholarships, women who had learned to code, inspired by Amara's own journey. This wasn't a wedding of extravagance, it was a wedding of meaning. The music began, a soft, stirring melody. Every head turned. Amara stepped forward, wearing a gown of ivory silk that hugged her curves and flowed like a dream behind her. She was breathtaking. Her long braids were crowned with delicate pearl pins, glimmering in the sunlight. Her brown eyes sparkled, not just with love, but with power, with choice. She walked slowly, holding her head high. She was no longer the girl who cried over a broken watch or begged for dignity in a glass office. She was a woman who had risen from ruin, a woman who had rebuilt herself. And now, she chose this moment. She chose him. Damon's eyes never left hers. He swallowed hard, emotion thick in his throat. As she reached him, he took her hands, whispering, "You are the only thing I never deserved, yet always needed." Amara smiled softly. "And you became the man I always hoped you could be." The ceremony was short, intimate, vows spoken not in grandeur, but in gratitude. "I vow to never stop learning from you," Damon said, voice raw with sincerity. "To honor your strength, your fire, and the path you walked to stand beside me." "I vow," Amara said, holding his gaze, "to love the man you've become, not because you changed for me, but because you changed for yourself." They slipped on simple gold bands, each engraved inside with the words, "Crowned in Love." Cheers erupted as they kissed, gentle, reverent, electric. In that kiss lived every heartbreak, every redemption, every line rewritten in their story. The reception followed under twinkling string lights, laughter bubbling through the air like champagne. Children danced on the grass. Guests shared stories. Amara and Damon sat side by side, hands entwined, watching it all. At one point, a little girl with wild curls and a shy smile approached them. "Miss Amara, thank you for my books," she said. Amara lifted her into a warm hug. Damon watched, his chest swelling. "You're welcome, baby girl," Amara said. "You're going to do big things." That night, back in their shared apartment, Damon held her on the balcony as city lights glittered below. "You know," he murmured against her temple, "you were never just a dream. You were the woman who woke me up." Amara smiled, tracing his jaw with her fingers. "And now you're wide awake, my king." He pulled her closer. "My queen." And so their story didn't end with riches or power, but with two hearts, reborn from ashes, beating as one. Together, forever.